Crispy Bomb, look, I think it's easy to say that my favorite game of the year was Avowed. And I loved every freaking second of that game, right? There was not anything about the game that I did not like. And I thought it was my game of the year 2025. Well, I'm sorry to say, Avowed, you have been boxed out because apparently The Outer Worlds 2 has stolen my soul. And I've even said publicly, and I know that the tomatoes have come for me, that I like The Outer Worlds 2 better than Bethesda's Starfield. Sorry, Todd. Please do not shun me. I'm just saying how I feel. But here's the thing, Crispy. Me personally, I have 5 days, 5 hours in this game. And I probably am not going to beat it for another 10 to 15 hours, maybe a little bit more. I'm at the cusp of having completed every one of my companion missions. I have one left to do. And I'm trying to do something. Again, no spoilers, folks. I have to do something to get two sides to work together. And it's very difficult. So I'm walking a razor's edge of madness, trying to get everything done. And that's what's taking me so long. And I'm quite frankly enjoying it. I just found a bunch of weapons. I found their version of the BFG. It's ridiculous. It is so ridiculous that if you shoot this thing indoors, everything is dead. I haven't died from it, but anything in front of the gun, you're dead. It's insane. Again, you've seen the videos. There's a shrink ray. You can shrink somebody down to a size of a ant, and how you kill them is stepping on them. It's freaking hilarious because you may even make a crunch. Like, it's gross, but fun and laughable all at the same time. I saw a lot of people like, well, yeah, the Outer Worlds is jokey. Yeah, it is. It's very jokey. There's some serious things there. There's some serious choices. If you make some bad choices, you will be panned by your crew. That hasn't happened to me. I actually saw Nico Muller actually pick the choice where he became an evil prick, which I couldn't believe. That's not Nico. Nico, what are you doing? But he became evil. Okay, you can do that. Getting back to the topic at hand. Obsidian is doing a bunch of things right now. Now, they already released 3 games this year, which is insane. Like, I always harken back to Obsidian on the same level of carrying Xbox the same way that I believe for years Insomniac has carried PlayStation. Insomniac is my favorite PlayStation studio. It's not even a question. I love their platformers and Ratchet and Clank and Spider-Man. Well, what can you say? I freaking love every one of them. They can really do no wrong. So, of course, with Wolverine around the corner, I'm very excited. But going back to Obsidian, they already released 3 games this year, which is insane. But what we have, and this is, again, I'm going to read it verbatim from, this comes the way of Chris Avellone. So Obsidian Entertainment reportedly has plans, Crispy, for a third Outer Worlds games, but is developing Avowed 2 and is ready to release DLC for the Outer Worlds 2. So Avowed 2 is happening. Now, this is based on statements from former Obsidian developer Chris Avellone, who is also indicated that the studio is dedicating its resources to other titles like Avowed. And they have, this is where it gets very interesting, Crispy. I'm going to read verbatim from the report. Avowed 2 is in development. Reports suggest that Avowed 2 is actively being worked on by the studio, according to Instant Gaming News. And this comes the way of the Gamer and Notebook Check. Now, the Outer Worlds 3, currently, there are no plans for. While the Outer Worlds 2 will receive DLC, there are currently no plans to develop a third installment in the series, according to the report. Obsidian is focusing on other IPs. The studio is splitting its team into multiple projects and is focusing more on its original fantasy IP, Avowed, rather than continuing the Outer Worlds series at this time. And that comes the way of a report from PureXbox.com. And of course, I will include all of this in the show notes. Now, I know I saw some people, the trolls immediately come for, it didn't sell well, so I guess that studio is gone. They put out 3 games this year. Like, I mean, I know that some people like really love being a troll and a POS, but can we say how many studios do you know, Crispy, Fuzzy, or Chat, that put out 3 RPGs in 1 year? Because I can't remember any, to be honest with you. So they're working on the Avowed 2, which, of course, Avowed 1 came out earlier this year and is a freaking phenomenal RPG. And you're not getting me off this hill. The Outer Worlds 2, well, I've already said all what I can say about it. I still have the screen up, as you can see. I'm not taking it down anytime soon. I love the game. Grounded 2, not for me, but a lot of people really enjoyed it. They did a lot of really big work from Avowed, from the first one to the second one. A lot of people really enjoying Grounded 2. Is it going to win any awards? I don't know, to be honest with you. But it came out. It's still in preview, and people really enjoyed it. All 3 games were reviewed very well. Are they in the 90s? No. But does everything have to be a 90 meta? I don't think so for me to enjoy or love the game. So when you hear that they don't have any plans for the Outer Worlds 3, I mean, like, okay, they're working on multiple projects. Maybe the Outer Worlds 3 comes out years from now after they've released 3 or 4 DLCs for the Outer Worlds 2, which I think they did 3, if I'm not mistaken, for the Outer Worlds 1. So I would imagine they're going to at least match that. But here is my thought process. The original writer for Fallout New Vegas came back. You heard Fuzzy talk about this. And he came out and said that they're not doing Fallout New Vegas 2. I think Fuzzy might be onto something here, because maybe it's not Fallout New Vegas 2. Maybe it's Fallout Utah. Maybe it's Fallout LA or New York or Fallout Boston or something like that. I actually think that they could have been tasked to make a Fallout game, because you got to remember, I think it was last year, and I don't have the report in front of me, but the head of the studio for Obsidian said they would love to return to Fallout. Why not make that happen? Let's talk about what they're working on, because again, Avowed 2 is going to be dope. I have no doubt about it, because the first one was amazing. We're going to get some DLC. Thank goodness. There's going to be some DLC for the Outer Worlds 2, which I am absolutely loving. And even though the Outer Worlds 3 is not in the cards, something else could be, and that could be a new Fallout game. Let's get your thoughts, brother.
Yeah, that would be something. I mean, if you really think about it, I said a long time ago, what if they do Fallout New California Republic? Because, NCR, you met the NCR in New Vegas.
Oh, dude, that's dope.
You know what I mean? The TV show gives you like the inklings of what's going on there and what has happened, but you could really jump in at certain points in the timeline. So it could be obviously they'd have to think it out at this point, like trying to merge all of these different things together. But it definitely, it doesn't, just because they didn't say New Vegas 2 doesn't mean that it couldn't have something, to do with New Vegas. So, I mean, obviously we would love that. I mean, it's just a hypothetical. So, that said, like, that's where you got to think, like, why wouldn't they do an Outer Worlds 3? And then it's like, oh, well, why would they do 2, like similar RPGs at the same time? So it's like, what is that team? Because you're not going to need that whole team to do DLCs. What are they kind of working on in the background? So, that's definitely intriguing. Avowed 2, I mean, they have so much that like they can improve and build on, just like they did with Outer Worlds 2. Like what I've played so far is, I mean, it just feels different, but feels, like just a more concrete game. especially with the gunplay. The gunplay is much better. So, you know, I think Obsidian's good at just getting games out, and like everybody finds bugs, but for the most part, they're pretty well polished. And then it seems like they're getting into this cadence of just, okay, some games we can build upon, we can make it better, we can make it, have a grander scale or whatever they really are choosing. And then sometimes you got to go on to something else. And I think, maybe, are we going to see another Grounded at some point? Obviously this one's in its preview process, but you can only build on that world, I think, so much. Now you can, ride the bugs and all these things. So I think they look for a challenge, and like once they get to a certain point where they say this is what we, with the funding and everything else, and the timelines and all this, and the ability to, if we feel we need to take longer, we can, the way it is now and working under Xbox, they have this opportunity to continue to build or build maybe a new IP. I mean, let's not act like they couldn't do that as well. So I'm just, once again, it's just an absurd 3 games, 1 year from one studio. We could in 3 years see Avowed 2 in my eyes. So, I mean, Obsidian is just a juggernaut. They're the best studio that Microsoft Xbox has ever bought. And I think they have this cadence right now, this ramp up of, being able to do all these things. They've proven the concept to the big wigs, as we'd say, and clearly they think that they are running that studio perfectly, and they're going to get a lot of opportunities to do, hopefully, a Fallout or a new IP with the rest of those teams as time goes on.
Great points all around, brother. And I think you're onto something. Absolutely great hot takes for sure. Fuzzy Belvedere, let's get your thoughts on this, brother, because this is a big topic. Again, folks, I'm sorry that the entire show was based around RPGs, but there's been a lot of news, especially from RPGs that are made by Xbox Game Studios. And I want to keep it focused and tight here. Obsidian has a lot going on. The fact that they are already working on Avowed 2 has me very excited because I absolutely adored that game. The fact that we have DLC happening for the Outer Worlds 2, because the Outer Worlds 1, again, folks, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure that it had 3 different DLCs. So if they match that, I mean, this game is going to be awesome. And it's gonna continue on after, which I'm very excited for. The Outer Worlds 3 is, and I would imagine, way off. I'm sure that they're going to wait to see how the game does itself, how many people have played it, how many people have purchased it, how well the DLCs go, how many people buy those. That all makes sense. But instead of jumping right back into the Outer Worlds 3, there could be a third project, and that third project could, in fact, actually be a Fallout. Because again, just going right back to a statement from the head of the studio last year, they said specifically, we would absolutely love to get back into Fallout. So obviously, they put out Avowed, they put out Grounded 2, they put out the Outer Worlds 2. They're going to be doing Outer Worlds 2 DLC. They're going to be doing the Avowed 2. And I think, it's just me spitballing here, and I think Crispy Bomb is onto something here. They may actually be working on a new Fallout game to kind of take the pressure off Todd Howard and Bethesda. Let's get your thoughts, man.
Yeah, I kind of remember, like, from the time that they hired back the guy from Fallout New Vegas 2 to the point of that statement where you were saying he would love to do another Fallout. I assumed that's something that's on the table. And sure, I'm pretty sure Phil is like, or even Sarah is like, we don't want to have fighting between the teams. Or although I guess Matt Booty would be the one have to handle a dispute between Todd and any other teams that want to touch the IPs and stuff. But I think that's on their to-do list right now, just for the fact that everybody at Xbox knows that Fallout is a priority at this point. You need to have something fairly close to probably the not this season, but the following season when that wraps up. Have something to at least show for it, other than DLC that goes into um, something along the lines like for Fallout 76, which they've already done. So whether that's, go ahead and get that remaster out there, and then maybe a year or two later, provided that they still have, a couple of more seasons to go, have the actual game that, either represents that storyline or can be a completely separate storyline in the Fallout universe. I can totally see them working on something to that effect. But uh, considering how talented Obsidian is right now, we know the Avowed 2 is the other project, and with Grounded 2 being a slightly smaller but another project in the works, I still think that they might have something else before they get to an Outer Worlds 3. And it's not that, from my understanding, whenever a team finishes or wraps a game, if there is to be any intent, even if it's not immediate, there is some, like, I guess, sketch up as far as what the idea might be for Outer Worlds 3. So they may have already at least visited that and have it shelved while they, have a team or a smaller part of the team focus on the DLCs that will kind of wrap up whatever else they want to have to this primary story. But I think they'll wind up having something for Outer Worlds 3 after potentially another project, which I'm kind of hopeful, even though I'm not the biggest high fantasy fan as far as RPGs are concerned. But there was an interesting title that they were pitching for Xbox at the launch of the Xbox One called Stormland. I know a lot of people may not have heard of it. There's some articles about it. So if you can, when you get a chance, look it up, about Stormland from Obsidian. Think of like an MMO, high fantasy, where you can have 100 active players in that universe. And I guess one of the key features that they wanted to have was like a public event where, let's say, there's a dragon attacking the castle. Everybody in that world or that instance could run to that event and attack the dragon, and it would show, like, if you got slayed by the dragon, then it would have like a little bit of your story and lore of the character that was lost based on the dragon, either biting your head off or smacking you off the side of the cliff with its tail or something. But if you wound up being one of those that slays the dragon, it would have that added to your lore for your character. So everybody that participated would get kind of like their own story, or their presence in the story with pictures and shareable items and loot and stuff like that. So it's an interesting concept. There's a lot more grounded stuff to it, but that was something that they were hoping that they could have for the launch of Xbox One. Now, I think Xbox shot it down in the past either because of hardware constraints or just timing, because it would have been something that probably wouldn't have launched until the end of Xbox One generation. But all in all, that's still something that was like a proof of concept that they've, at least worked up some working aspects of it, that I would not be opposed to seeing them make that into a full game. But Obsidian's a great studio, much like Boom is like compared them to Insomniac, where they've been in some instances with Insomniac in particular, they've been carrying PlayStation this past generation and a half, I guess you could say, with releasing the most titles of their first party studios. And Obsidian is kind of doing the same thing. Now, a lot of people will say, well, you got your playground games, you got your 343 now Halo Studios that released a lot of things, and same thing with Coalition. But like Obsidian is able to, I guess, churn out quality products in a shorter period of time. Not saying that the others can't do the same, but it seems like uh, Playground Games is slowed just a smidge, but I think it was from outside forces making them slow down their iterations of Forza Horizon, just to kind of let those games live longer and let the license get its full breath of space before you make the new title. And then with Coalition, it seems like they've been the main focus as far as being the gurus of Unreal Engine 5 while working on their own projects, also working on side projects to, I guess, sharpen their craft with it, even though I hear those projects have been shelved for now, but they've been helping out a lot of the other teams get, caught up or up to speed on UE5. So they've been slowed down to some extent by being kind of like, I wouldn't say the tutors, but they kind of are in some extent with other Xbox studios. But all in all, Obsidian's a great studio. I'm sure that they'll be able to churn out a few more projects here in the coming years, because I think they had a goal of having, what was it, 7 games in 5 years, or 5 games in 7 years, or something along those lines. And the original Outer Worlds was not included in that scope. And I don't know if Pentiment was part of that number as well, but yeah, they're definitely going to be a studio to keep an eye on. And I would not be opposed to them, sneaking in a new IP before they tackle Outer Worlds 3. I mean, it just dropped. We got plenty of time for DLC. Like,
Yeah.
I only have maybe about between 19 to 20 hours in.
Fraud.
Well, no, because I had to restart because I originally picked up the compulsive liar negative trait, and it started
Dude.
making me into an a-hole. So I was like, I don't want to do that, because it's like,
You have no idea. I got a. It's not a bug, folks. You know what? Please continue. I'll tell my horrible story. With my second playthrough. Ted.
no, but there's like parts of your crew and stuff that you're kind of helping them along with their side missions and stuff like that. But by picking up the compulsive liar one, now you're being an a-hole to them. It's like, yeah, I got better things to do. I'll talk to you later, and then you like never talk to them, or you avoid them, kind of thing. So I didn't want to be like that as far as for how I played through it. Now it helps with some of your conversations with random characters, convincing them to break the law or do other things that they're not supposed to do. But I don't want to be the a-hole to the people on my crew, because I have a feeling they might wind up having to save my life again. So I don't want them to be like, screw that guy, he was an a-hole. Yeah, I had to start over on, or at least start from a previous save. So I've been doing a lot of saves, which RPGs, saves coming, I'm guilty of it. So it is what it is.